Hey everyone, welcome back to this lesson, and for this video I'm just going to talk about some of my 4 best tips that will hopefully help you out and also becoming a better programmer. And these tips will work for even if you are an experienced programmer or whether you're completely new. So these invaluable tips will certainly make your job much easier, whether you fall into either camp. Now, just a disclaimer before I get into the first tip, is that these are the 4 best tips that work for me, and I think that it will also help out the vast majority of people who are watching this video right now. So if there is a tip that helps you out but it's not mentioned in this video, well, just simply do that. I would say just combine some of my tips along with your own ones that you come up with, and as long as it helps make your job much easier, there's no right or wrong. So this video will just cover my 4 tips that I do when I'm doing a coding project, for example. So let's dive into tip number 1, and that is to actively type out the code. Don't just passively watch or read. So this is something that's important. Whether you're trying to learn how to code by either reading books or watching videos, make sure that you are actively typing out the code yourself. Make sure that you are actually following along in real time, because it's easy to think that you understand the concepts, but you might realize that when you actively try to do it, when you actually jump into coding, you might be at a loss. And that's why I also want you to follow along. It's important to not just look at the code without trying to type it out yourself. And some of the reasons for this is because actively typing out the code also builds your muscle memory, which will be helpful because you'll be typing a lot, obviously. But the more important one aside from that is that actively following along forces you to see if you can get the code working for yourself. It promotes engagement and also concentration, and that will allow you to delve deeper into the details of syntax and the structure and logic. So the thing is with when you try to get the code working, because let's face it, coding is a lot of problem solving and also sometimes trial and error. So if you follow along in real time, and let's say you end up accidentally making a mistake without realizing it, it will also help out your problem solving skills, because if let's say you're handling a large project, there's a lot of code, you need that attention to detail, and basically following along helps that happen. Whether it's small amounts of coding or a large amount, the same logic applies. So that's why I would suggest to type out the code instead of just sitting back and watching and thinking that you understand it without trying it out. Trust me, this will definitely help out a lot. This hands-on approach will reinforce learning through repetition. It's like how you would learn any other task aside from just coding. This same thing will apply for anything you learn, alright? So that's why I put this as my first tip. Definitely follow along, whether you're watching a video or just reading something. So my second tip is to also accept there's always more to learn. Because I would say that being an effective programmer is not just about memorizing, but it's also about your mindset. The journey, well, let me give you something. The journey of learning to be a better coder, it's one that will never end. Programming is complicated and there's a lot to learn out there, even if you've been doing it for a number of years. So just accept the fact that things will not always be perfect, and that there will always be something new to learn when it comes to programming. And this is true even if you are experienced. Like I said earlier, even the most experienced programmers will probably be using Google or any other search engine more than they'd like to admit sometimes. And that is something that can happen even if you are doing something that you normally do every day. Like it's very common for anybody, whether they're a newbie or someone who's experienced, to have brain farts, for example, or they might just be out of it for whatever reason and they might need a reminder. So it's completely normal. Don't beat yourself up over it if you end up using Google for anything. So for example, let's say you make a mistake anywhere. A good starting point is just simply copying and pasting that into a search engine. Can be any one of them. And one of the websites I would suggest is definitely Stack Overflow, but as long as you can find any other source that helps you fix your problem, well, just use that. So for example, this. So it will tell you what you might have missed, and just simply look over the code and just simply do that. Now, obviously, I'm referring to this is simply something very basic, but if you have something like bigger, we'll just simply do the same thing. Just copy that error message and then paste it in a search engine. So that is my tip number 2. It's as long as you can get the code working. This is what I would like you to think about. As long as you can get the program working, the code is working, whether that's through memorizing or because you Googled something, just celebrate the fact that you got your task accomplished, because it will get better as you code more and more, as you get more experienced. But I'm just trying to say, even if you have numbers of years of experience, you will definitely resort to using Google at one point or any other search engine. So just please don't think that you failed to be a programmer or anything like that. That's silly, because I'll tell you, even the most experienced ones will probably be using it a lot more than they'd like to admit. And my third tip is to try to explain how the code works in your own words. Now, whether that means talking to yourself or perhaps trying to write down what you understand about a particular programming concept, this will enhance the way you understand it. It will promote a deeper understanding of the material that you are trying to learn about. And that's something I do with myself. I sometimes initiate conversations with myself. I know it sounds silly, but let me tell you, it actually works pretty well for me. It doesn't just work for learning how to code. It also works for other concepts that I'm trying to learn, just in general. So, because if you think that you understand something, try to like really ask yourself, do you really like understand it, or and then try to like explain how it works in your own words without resorting to Google at first. And then if you find out that it ends up, oh, I actually don't know how this particular thing works, well, that's okay. This is where I would use ChatGPT. Now, I'll get into that in a second. For example, let's say I have a program. This is a program that I'm gonna demonstrate. It's just simply a drawing app in Python. So let me go ahead and demonstrate this. So it's a program that you can simply draw whatever you want, but you can also erase it if you hold right click. But let's take a peek behind the curtain and let's see what's behind this program. And let's see what it's called. So it's app_draw.py. And you can see that is a lot of mumbo jumbo. So let's go ahead and let's say there is a particular area that we don't understand. It doesn't matter which one you pick, just simply pick whatever. You can simply copy that, and then you can go to ChatGPT and just simply ask, explain what this code does, for example. And then you can kind of get a brief understanding of it, and then try to like recite it in your own words, and until you can fully grasp the concept. Now, you might be wondering, well, why don't we just use ChatGPT for everything? Well, that ties back into my first point, where I was trying to tell you to try to type out the code yourself and don't just actively try to read or watch. Well, in this case, you will best learn if you actually type out the code rather than just constantly copying and pasting. So that's a way that I would use either Google or ChatGPT when it comes to learning as best as possible. Alright, so that is tip number 3 when it comes to it. Trust me, I think this along with the first point might be very important, because it really tries to engage your brain into trying to sort out like those concepts, those newly learned concepts, and really trying to articulate them. Alright, so now my final tip is to definitely don't gloss over the error messages. Now, you might think that's common sense, but you'd be surprised at how you might get the urge to simply just gloss through it. You might just simply get the urge to skip it. You might think it's not important. Well, don't be that guy. Simply resist the urge to do that, and actively try to look at what your computer is trying to tell you. And also, you have to read carefully, because let me tell you, there's going to be, and you will definitely understand what I mean as you start coding as you continue your coding journey. Basically, like if you copy and paste that error message onto Google or any other search engine, you will find that there are a lot of different causes that will give off the same error message, and there may be even very like very minimal differences. Like it might be 99% the same error message, but you might find out that the other poster might have one certain type of different problem, like a different detail, basically. So it might require a different solution for your personal problem that might not work for you, but it might work for that poster. So that's the reason why I don't want you to skim through the error messages too fast. Definitely give it as much time as it needs, so that you can really understand what you need to fix in your program. So yeah, those are my 4 tips on how you might make your coding journey much easier as you go along. So thank you very much for watching. The next lesson will be more programming, since this video was simply just some tips on what to do in the meantime. So I hope it helps you out, and we'll see you in the next lesson.